Welcome back to Unaware Commentary, the place for Pokemon TCG battle narration that doesn't care about the stats.
Welcome back to Pokemon Walk and Talk, the definitely not a podcast where I talk about Pokemon while I get myself out and go for a walk. Today's ramblings are going to be about tech cards. If you're listening to me talk, you probably know what that is, just as far as the TCG or in the Pokemon TCG. But technology or the tech cards of your deck are just going to be deck building inclusions that are made for particular matchups. The frame of mind that's really had me thinking about tech cards is Slowking. Slowking is a really interesting deck that has taken on a few different forms since its release, I believe back in Twilight Masquerade, if I'm correct. It'd be crazy to think it's been around as long as something like Dragapult potentially, and just not seeing the initial success until it has had other partners being printed with it that would make it so that it's better. But Slowking has created an interesting conversation around it. So it's actually from SCR. So it is not Twilight Masquerade, silly me. It's from Stellar Crown. So Stellar Crown, Slowking. It is the Seek Inspiration Slowking, the Psychic type with 120 HP with that Seek Inspiration attack that discards the top card of your deck. That card's a Pokemon. It doesn't have a rule box. You choose one of its attacks, and you're able to utilize its attack. So every time a new set comes out and we get new non-rule box Pokemon, Slowking as a toolbox combo deck gets more cards. Well, you'd be thinking maybe flipping cards off the top of the deck blindly would be bad, and you would be right. So utilizing the Stadium Academy at night can allow for a player to put cards on top of their deck once per turn. So something like Academy at Night or Cypher Maniac, which also allows for the searching up of 2 cards and placing them on the top of the deck, you are able to manipulate the way that interaction with Slowking Seek Inspiration works and kind of handpick what your attacks are. So I would call it something like a toolbox strategy, and it's really takes the form of a traditional combo deck that we would see in the Pokemon TCG and in other trading card games as well. Combos can utilize a certain sequence of cards to be able to do something outside of the norm. So something like a Seek Inspiration attack is doing more than a typical just straightforward beat stick strategy might do. Something like Raging Bolt, where there's combinations of cards that it takes to be able to get a big Bellowing Thunder off, but it is just a straightforward attack, active into active. And we do see that happen with Slowking, but not in the typical sense, because it's not utilizing its own attacks necessarily. We do see the utilization now of things like Metagross, as it has opened up the damage threshold in Slowking, allowing it to do 300 damage with the Metallic Hammer attack. And with the attachment of something like a Brave Bengal, it allows Slowking to get up to those larger numbers like Dragapult without necessarily needing to put a liability like Lily's Clefairy in play, where previously Lily's Clefairy would have been necessary to create weakness on the Dragapult and be able to take that knockout and take 2 prizes, but Lily's Clefairy only having 190 HP, unless you were going to see the, again, tech inclusion of something like a Lily's Pearl into the deck to make it so Lily's Clefairy would give up 1 less prize. It was likely that you were just putting something into play that you would see the bossing up of a Lily's Clefairy, maybe the activation of something like a Dusclops from a Dragapult player. It will take multiple prizes on things like Slowpokes that may be on the bench. So, inclusions that are interesting after the success of Slowking at the Turin Regional Championships or the Turin Special Event in Italy. I was of the belief that the rise of Rabska and Shaman were going to make it so it would almost be a bad play into the NAIC meta, only to see Slowking being successful on stream And not because it was being, you know, boxed out by something like Shaman, like it was in the finals at Turret, but because it was just having combo deck issues. But as we saw at Turret, teching for something like Slow King or something like Ogrepod with a Shaman, right, was good. It's largely what won the Hops Trevenant deck the finals. Yes, some good flips from, you know, Hops fan sub did make a difference, but what cards you're including in your deck can make a big difference, as Slow King, with the utilization of Triforce off Giram, is just able to take knockouts. So something like the inclusion of a Rabska or a Shaman in your deck really can shift the way a matchup works if it takes the initial strategy of a deck away, as Trifrosting is usually Slow King's plan A, with Metagross being its plan B, and then having to go from there. Well, teching, you end up in this interesting cycle of going tech for tech with people. In Slow King has the option to play something like Spectrier that utilizes damage counters rather than direct damage, and is a direct counter to something like Shaman, as Rabska is a little bit tougher to put together if a player is specifically worried about their matchup against something like Trifrost coming out of a Slow King deck. They would just include Shaman, a fairly easy bench sitter that can hold an air balloon potentially, or just has one retreat. Really not all that difficult, not a huge liability, as it only gives up a single prize. It has enough HP that it's not just being phantom dived off the bench. So Shaman, pretty simple to sit there and just tell you that you don't get to Trifrost anymore if you're the Slow King player. But a lot of Slow King players not opting to play the Spectrier. So is it worth not playing Spectrier because it is not a good starter for the deck, meaning that you want to either start Slowpoke, start something like a Smoochum should you choose to play it, or a Kangaskhan EX so that you can run errand and draw cards? Is it worth playing Spectrier if you are expecting to see a lot of Shaman? Well, our players in NAIC, or the North American International Championship, didn't opt to play Spectrier very often because people still didn't tech Shaman. There just was not enough respect for Slow King, not an expectation that the deck was going to be seeing much play, as Dragapult was the #1 played deck and continues to be the #1 played deck. But the Slow King matchup is pretty good. If there isn't a Shaman in play, you're able to knock out Duskulls, you're able to sweep up their Dreepies, you're able to put a Lily's Clefairy in play and hit them for 600 damage if you need to, or a Brave Bengal onto that Slow King, again being able to hit 330, which knocks out Dragapult EX. So it's interesting. Do you play Shaman? Do you, as a Slow King player, play Spectrier? In the same sense, right, if we're going to look at a different deck, something like Dragapult, do you play Moltres? With the increase of grass decks in the meta that utilize Teomask Ogerpon EX to draw cards, when you see the increase in large HP attackers like Hydrapple, that with a Meganium in play, doubling the number of energies, that's able to reach up to the high HP stat of something like Dragapult EX, do you play the Moltres? And overwhelmingly, the answer has been yes, almost to the point where if you sat down against a Dragapult player as a Hydrapple player, I would almost be convinced that the matchup is bad now. Because if they're playing the Moltres, it just turns Palpad, extra fire energy attachment, or a regular fire energy attachment into 2 prizes. And then now Night Stretcher, fire energy attachment, is just 2 more prizes, or 2 Night Stretchers is just 2 more prizes. And the prize trade is just not sustainable because you can't boss around the Moltres. They're just gonna re-promote it and likely take another knockout. And no, Moltres doesn't knock out Hydrapple EX, but Hydrapple EX doesn't do the damage it needs to do to be able to consistently take out knockouts on something like Dragapult if you don't have the Ogerpons in play, or the Meganium in play for that matter. So it's interesting to see that the tech inclusion of something like Moltres has become extremely popular in things like Crushing Hammer, Dragapult. It's essentially necessary in Blaziken, Dragapult, as Blaziken is your fire attacker usually of choice there, with it being able to power itself up off of its ability, pulling energy cards out of the discard pile. But with the increase of play of things like Rose's Encouragement, losing that additional fire energy attachment on an early Moltres that takes 2 prizes off an Ogerpon is totally fine. Because if you do end up behind at any point, you have the utilization of things like Special Red Card to limit hands, or if you're playing Unfair Stamp, you can limit your opponent's hands and then find your Roses, power up your Dragapult, get back to Phantom Diving. So it's interesting to see how some tech cards are extremely popular and significantly shift matchups, something like Moltres, whereas something like Shaman has not quite found its way into different decks. And I think it is a matter of deck space to be able to find cards versus the likelihood that you're going to see a deck. If you're going into a local meta, do you tech for grass decks? Do you tech for Slowking? Do you tech for Crustle? Crustle, another interesting part of the meta, as you will see the decks include cards that you would never see before, because you have to have a matchup into Crustle, or Crustle will just make another top 4 run, because it will run into all of these decks that are playing these large EX attackers that are good, but they are Rulebox Pokemon, and they just get walled out, and you need to be able to play around a wall. I remember when we were building a deck to take out to the Las Vegas Regional Championships months and months ago, there was a question of, do we play Galvantula EX in Joltik Goldango? And the answer came out to be yes, because of if we saw Cornerstone in the Mega Box deck that was extremely popular at the time, though Cornerstone was down in play and certainly is down in play now. Otherwise, we just lost because everything else in our deck had abilities. Similarly now, I've been looking at the Deoxys defense form that, yes, it takes 3 energies to attack, but its attack makes it so that it can't be damaged by Pokemon with abilities. And the majority of attackers have them. No Raging Bolt does it, and no Dragapult doesn't. But if you are playing them in a deck that is already playing Psychic Energy, you're probably playing Lily's Clefairy, and you just wouldn't go into the Deoxys. So you would play a Deoxys because it just wins X matchup. It wins the Crustle matchup just straight up. It wins the Festival Lead matchup just straight up because you sit it in the active, you get the 3 energy attached to it, and as long as it's not able to be bossed around or set up to be knocked out in another capacity, you just win. You just continue to deal damage, and you run down decks like that. It is interesting to wonder what tech inclusions do and don't matter depending on the different metas, because if you're never going to see a grass deck in your meta, Moltres is not helpful in the Pultmere. That's why we see the inclusion of things like Crushing Hammer, because the Pultmere was just the most likely matchup. It continues to be the most likely matchup for our Dragapult players, is that you are going to see the mirror. So are you teching for the mirror? Do you play Crushing Hammer? Do you play something like Lily's Clefairy? Do you play Rose's Encouragement? So that if you are the player that goes behind, you have the option to dig your way back into the game. These are the interesting kind of questions that come along with deck building. I do think that with the diverse and, in my opinion, fairly healthy meta that we have going on, these are some unique questions. We will see the rise of new cards coming into play with Pitch Black on the horizon, just kind of giving you, I guess, kind of dating when this is being recorded. Pitch Black probably still about a month away, but it will be legal, I believe, for the World Championships. So it will be interesting to see what inclusions and things come out. Lily's Pearl on the Clefairies to be able to mix up prize races for decks like Raging Bolt, or even just the Kangaskhan Clefairy deck that recently won NAIC. Interesting to see what deck building Again, techs will emerge. Will we see the rise of Slowking with people not respecting it and not playing Shaman? Will we see the rise of a Hydrapple deck or another grass deck because Moltres decreases in play because it's not good in the mirror? Will Dragapult return to its usual place atop leaderboards and winning tournaments and taking home prize money? Or will something new emerge? Lots of fun decks on the horizon. The fossil decks, the what has now been revealed to be hide and sneak, because its translation to Ghost Veil didn't make its way into the TCG when it was translated. So something like hide and sneak, and how will those changes impact regional play, high level play, or even your local play? I think that most players do find themselves playing either on TCG Live or playing locally more often, and sometimes that will determine what cards you think are good, bad, or indifferent. Me personally, you find me, I'm probably trying to play a Shaman, and as I said in the previous walk and talk, I'm a 2 Meowth when space is available. I'm a 2 Meowth, 2 red card in EX decks or in multi-prize attacker decks, just because I feel like it's the only thing that really gives you any shot into the single prize matchup. And in decks like Raging Bolt or in the Mega Kangaskhan deck, we've even seen the bumping up of those Meowth numbers into the 3 or 4. I am not so much afraid of starting them, but we have even seen the oddities of decks just not playing it, which feels crazy. I know there's a Zoroark EX deck that's popular, it just doesn't play Meowth. I think with the uptick in Transformation Tome in the Zoroark EX deck after NAIC or at NAIC as possible, that Meowth finds its way into the deck just because being able to last ditch catch feels so good for your Ultra Balls to be able to be all of your supporters, for it to be Lilies early in the game, for it to be boss sorted late in the game. It just feels too good to not be playing on a regular basis. But those are just kind of my initial thoughts when it comes to deck cards. I do think that Slowking is a very fun deck. Likely will be the gameplay that is in the background here. I know that it'll be a pretty teched out list because I like playing Spectrier, because I don't like losing to Shaven, and it will likely be a multiple Meowth deck. And I don't know that I would be on 2 red card in Slowking because it's a single prize deck, but it does utilize Mega Kangaskhan as a means of drawing cards. And if Mega Kangaskhan gets knocked out, then you're just being able to red card people. I don't know, it's a tough one. Definitely a high Meowth count deck, as we want to be able to see lots and lots of cards to be able to set up that combo engine. So hopefully some good gameplay is in the background, or it's me whiffing on combos, which in itself I feel like can be a lesson in teching, because you tech too hard and you start cutting out consistency pieces and you're not able to play the game, well, your techs really didn't do too much for you if you couldn't find them or if you don't get to set up and play the game. But sometimes that's just Pokemon. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time, trainers.